finally wrote a script for this. But welcome to the Rhymes with Green podcast. I'm Ryan Bussell here today with tenor Justin Gonzalez. I feel like everyone throws that on the front there.
Yeah, they do. They definitely give me my moniker.
It's like somebody, like the first person to do it, like read your name in like a playbill and was just like, I guess it's part of his name.
That's it. Well, it doesn't help that all of my handles have that on it.
So you started it.
So it may have been me that started it. Well, in classical music, which is where I kind of got my start in performing, that's kind of like your defining factor is like, what's your instrument? And so, if you play piano, it's your name, comma, piano. And so for me, it was always Justin Gonzalez, comma, tenor. And so I was like, well, I guess that's like my brand.
There you go. Yeah. Singing high notes.
That's really it. And occasionally getting paid for them. So
are you tenor one or tenor two?
It depends what I'm singing. So if I'm singing in a chorus setting, like I'm singing as part of the ensemble, I'll ask to sing tenor 2. But when I sing higher in my voice operatically, it sounds really, really heroic and really, really its own thing. So if I'm singing in an ensemble, it doesn't blend really nicely. And so if I'm singing as a soloist, that's usually when I'll sing more of like the tenor 1 repertoire. But if I'm singing with a group,
yeah,
I play better with others if I'm tenor 2.
So you're not like screaming.
Exactly. As we call it, the meat hook. Just
But so then, where does music really start for you? Like, is it someone in your family, or is it something you got introduced to yourself?
Oh, wow. So music as a point of enjoyment was just my folks. So my parents, they were just such avid music lovers, and they were very different in their own right. So my father was Puerto Rican from New York.
Okay.
And my mother was Pennsylvania Dutch and Lithuanian from Philadelphia.
I was wondering about the Gonzalez thing.
Yeah. Yeah. First 10 years of my life, I thought my last name was spelled with a question mark. I mean, you look like me. I'm, very much so Latino Blanco. So, but yeah, so dad Puerto Rican, mom not. And dad kind of grew up with all of the great Hispanic music, more like traditional, salsa and, merengue, bachata and that sort of stuff. And my mom, was very much so a pop lover of, what was kind of like the commercial top 40 stuff. But my father loved that music as well. And so we heard everything in our household growing up. I mean, we would hear, Hector Lavoe and, Ruben Blades and Celia Cruz, the great, La Fania All-Star singers from, from New York.
What kind of music is that? What style?
So that would be like salsa. So La Fania All-Stars was actually a style. They would often, it would often be called boogaloo, which would have the style of salsa, like traditional music, mixed with top 40 disco. So it was like a marriage of those two styles of music, made it a lot more mainstream, where it was, again, a marriage and a comfortable place of like the traditional Latin flavors and Afro Latin flavors, mixed with that top 40 dance music and that kind of like hook-centric kind of music. Just, absolutely loved listening to that as a kid. But then we would be listening to stuff like Elton John and Billy Joel and Santana and just, again, that, David Bowie and Queen and, the great pop music that my parents loved growing up as kids of the 70s, And so we had all that music, and just one day, my dad used to love telling this story that he thought that I was listening to a Billy Joel CD up in my bedroom, and he came upstairs to tell me to turn it off, and he realized that I was playing the harmonica. I was playing the Piano Man harmonica part up in my bedroom. And my dad was like, oh, we've got to keep this kid listening to music. And so between that, and I had just amazing teachers at school that were just like, he's in kindergarten, but I can play any note on the piano and he can match pitch.
Oh, you have relative pitch, I guess, or perfect pitch?
I just have a good ear. That's it. I never had perfect pitch. I kind of have sometimes like where some songs I can just kind of like pick. I could just find myself in the right key. I do not have that sort of innate perfection in my musical life, but I have a very good ear, which has really helped me a ton in my career, even as a classical musician, but it helped me even more taking the skills that I learned as a classical musician, learning music the formal way, but then also performing top 40 music and popular styles of music. Having a developed ear allowed me to kind of be able to bridge that gap really nicely, but also communicate well due to the fact that I understood the language of music.
Absolutely. And you said that you started off with like formal, more, I guess, like traditional, like style music. Did you like go to college, or is that more of like a high school thing, or like self-study?
So my musical like education journey started young. I had the opportunity. I grew up in Philadelphia, and they have what's called they're called magnet schools within the public school district. And so if you have if your academic grades reach a certain point, you have access to those schools to apply to be a part of those schools. And so as a young man, I did really, really well academically, and so I had all of these schools that I could go to across the whole city. And Philadelphia is a huge city. I mean, we sometimes think of it as, what would be like Center City or Old City, these kind of pockets. But Philadelphia is such an enormous city of neighborhoods. And I grew up at the one end of the city, and I had the chance to apply, audition, and I eventually was awarded a spot at a school in South Philadelphia, the other end of the city from where I grew up.
You were in North Philly?
I was in Northeast Philadelphia. So there's again kind of all these different sections. There's a part called the Greater Northeast. I was not the Greater at all. I was just in the Northeast. I was kind of this, Northeast, just outside of, just a kind of above the Center City area, but it was still about a 2-hour public transportation trip just to get to school. But it was amazing because it was this very small school, 5th through 12th grade, 500 kids in the whole school. And it was just amazing to be a part of this school, kids from all over the city, and we all had a common interest, which was music. A wonderful school called the Girard Academic Music Program. So I started to study music at this school. Again, 5th through 12th grade, I went to this school. All 500 kids at the school, it was mandatory that they had to sing. So we had a school chorus of 500 students.
That's crazy.
Amazing.
Would you all sing at the same time?
Twice a year in our big annual concerts, we would all sing one piece of music together as one whole school.
From the stage, or would you like surround the audience?
So my school did not have its own auditorium. No, which was, again, it was a very interesting school. Since then, the school has had some really amazing improvements. They do have their own theater now. But it was just a small school in South Philadelphia. And what we would do is we would travel from South Philadelphia to north-ish Philadelphia to Girard College. And they have an enormous, enormous chapel there. And so we would always perform our spring and winter concerts there. They actually have a very famous pipe organ at the Girard College Chapel, where your standard pipe organs, you have the keyboard, the console, and then like either at the back of the church or somewhere else in the space are the pipes. This is one of, I think, less than 10 ever made, and I think definitely less than 5 that still exist, where the pipes are actually installed on the roof where the sound is focused down to the audience.
That sounds terrifying.
I was offered to go up into the chamber, and I declined. I'm like, no. Please, first off, I don't know if you all can tell by looking, I'm not what you would call a subtle gentleman. I'm a big guy. And so I'm like, I don't want to fall through, because again, it's like 6 stories up. This.
It's like trapping bugs in a glass and tapping the top with a spoon.
Exactly. No, thank you. So, but very, very cool in the sense that, again, we normally hear an organ's sound, a pipe organ sound, kind of coming from behind us or from in front of us. This is literally the sound coming down from above us, which is, I think, kind of apropos that, this heavenly sound coming down from you from the ceiling of a chapel. But again, it's only like one of, I think, less than 5 that still exist in the world, but we got to perform in this space, and it was large enough that all 500 of the students could sing at the same time together.
And you guys would do that every year or twice a year?
Yeah, we would do it twice a year together, and it was really moving. I mean, when I've had the opportunity to go back and see this, it's like, again, the youngest kids at the school were maybe 9 years old, and then all the way up to 18. And
Oh.
yeah, because again,
I thought it was like a high school, because like my high school was like 420.
so no, yeah. So it's like middle school age all the way up to graduating seniors. So we had 5th through 12th grade in the school, but again, my graduating class when I graduated was 58 kids.
Oh, that's really small.
Yeah, very small. Very, very small.
Especially for an inner city school.
Incredibly so, right? Yeah, I think the next nearest high school, they had a graduating class of like 300 or 400.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not subtle. But I mean, but this school was just, it was small. It gave me an opportunity to really be able to fall in love with music as not just a language, but as an art form, and to really be able to express myself and really learn how music was a part of my life, not just as a hobby or as an interest, but it very quickly kind of dawned on me that like, oh, this is going to be something I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Absolutely. So then, as far as like live performance goes, not just in like a school sense, like in a choral thing, but like as far as a profession or something, like not just that you're like, this is a thing for my life, but like as far as like a thing that is your job where you're like, I think I need to take this seriously, like where does that kind of all start out?
So again, this was a very interesting school. So where we did have like, we had the winter concert, you had the spring concert. Due to us being a performance-based school in the city of Philadelphia, we were often called on to do special events and things of that nature. So I was 11 years old the first time that I performed for a president.
For a president? Which one?
That was President Clinton.
Okay.
And he was in office still.
Before or after the skit?
After. After. Which definitely, also being on the younger side of the other students around me, I was like, wait a second, is that what happened? It's like, definitely was a quick education for my young little mind. But yeah, so that was like my first performance with, in a professional style setting. Then the next year, I was called on to be a part of a very select group of singers from my school to perform at the Academy of Music in Philadelphia, America's first opera house.
Wow.
To perform with the Philly Pops. At the time, the music director was Grammy Award-winning pianist Peter Nero. And the featured soloist for the evening was a gentleman by the name of Keith Budabal, who is one of the famous Phantoms of the Opera from the history of Phantom of the Opera on Broadway.
Really?
And so, again, it was just like I kind of got this taste of professionalism while I was at school. But the real big switch happened. My voice changed when I was 11 years old. And I've pretty much sounded and looked like this since I was 13.
Seriously?
Very, very seriously.
So at 13, you were about six.
I was
close to 6 foot.
I was 6 foot tall at 13, and my voice was really just starting to settle to what you're hearing now. And I was approached to join a chorus for a 2-week tour in Europe as their soloist, and it was unbelievable because again I grew up as a poor kid in Philly. Did not my dad was a Vietnam veteran. My father served in Vietnam. He was a Marine, disabled. My mother was a nurse, full-time nurse, and so we were burning the candle at both ends and warming the middle, at the same time. Yeah. And so we didn't really have a lot, but I was very fortunate that this chorus saw the potential in me and not only hired me and paid me to sing, but they also volunteered to cover all of my costs, that all I had to do was get a passport, which terrified my mother. She's like, what do you mean a passport? And they're like, oh, well, the tour is 1 week in Germany, 1 week in France.
That's incredible.
It was. Again, I didn't realize that someone like me had a seat at the table. Let's be honest. I didn't know there was a table, but here I was, my first concert as a 13-year-old in Europe as a professional soloist was in Notre Dame in Paris.
Wow. And
it was just such a moving thing. And that was the real moment. Hearing my voice reverberate in that space. It's like, oh no. this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
How can you leave that behind?
Right, absolutely. It was just so magical to just kind of, again, being 13 years old. And, I think about like what are all of my other friends doing? They wake up in the morning, they have breakfast, they go to school, and between waking up and sitting down in first period, they've already changed what they want to do with the rest of their lives 10 times.
Yeah.
And here I was 13. I'm like, this is it. This is it. And it was. I came back from that tour. I ended up singing for, there was a special guest who came to my school to kind of do a group master class with some of our older singers at the school, some of the seniors. But I was pulled out of class to come and sing for this person. Again, in 8th grade, I was asked to sing for this person. And she just approached my principal and said, I need to teach this kid. I need to teach him. And my principal was like, oh, he comes from a poor family, so there's no way they could afford lessons. And she was just stopped him and said, I didn't say that I wanted his money. She goes, someone needs to protect this kid. And so she kind of fast forward, she taught me for 15 years without taking a dime, and was just such an amazing force behind my growth as a technician, but also just someone who fell in love with this concept of this is how we share our stories. And she turned out to be one of the professors at the Academy of Vocal Arts in Philadelphia, arguably one of the 5 best schools for opera in the world, just happens to be in Philadelphia. She was also the head of education with the symphonic chorus of the Philadelphia Orchestra at the time. Wow. And so she, just because of having that relationship, that again just opened up opportunities. I was 16 years old when I had my debut at Carnegie Hall because of her. And just, again, the relationships that we kind of developed, and just getting to meet more people through this kind of process, which, again, very weird. Again, 16 years old, my colleagues were in their 40s and their 50s, singing with this opera chorus with the Philadelphia Orchestra. Mm-hmm. It was a very quick education in professionalism, and just how in that world we're kind of meant to act, but also how we are also expected to be our authentic selves. And I got to learn so much about not just who I was needing to be, but also who I was authentically. Yeah. Just a crazy turn of events, and it just allowed me to kind of have this crazy life where I was 18 years old and I was a unionized singer with the Philadelphia Orchestra. I was told at the time that I was the youngest unionized singer in the history of the Philadelphia Orchestra at that time.
Wow.
Well, most singers, they start to really study in their late high school years, then they go on to college, and then they kind of do this path, and then it's not until either they're in college, finishing up a degree, their undergrad or their master's, that they really start to explore professional singing. I had already been singing at a professional level at 14 years old. And so I had this very peculiar, kind of trajectory. And so by the time I was 18, starting my freshman year in college, I was already a unionized singer with the Philadelphia Orchestra. It was unbelievable to kind of have that be just a moment in my journey. And so my music education started so young.
So then, so how about, I guess, on the other side of the coin, the other thing that kind of informs your performing is like a lot more comedy stuff. Before we get to the present, you're also a comedian.
I am, yeah.
As I don't know if it was a side thing or just in addition. But where does that start? Is that like around the same time?
So, I was always someone who was like quick with a quip. And it wasn't until later that I kind of was stepping away from doing formal staged opera work, that I was finding myself working with people who were capital C comedians, where I was lowercase c comedic, and I was funny in my storytelling. I'll never forget. I met a woman named Chris Rich, and we met at a wedding of a mutual friend, and we just hit it off. And she said, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. She's starting to get back into comedy. She's doing a cabaret show in Philadelphia, and I think that you guys will get along just right. And that's when I was introduced to Julia Scotti.
Wow.
And so this was before Julia Scotti did America's Got Talent, before she blew up.
For those who don't know, Julia Scotti is a trans comedian from New Jersey, I believe, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, who was on America's Got Talent.
I
think
season
incredible story.
16, I think it was. Just amazing story, amazing woman, just an amazing artist too, just so authentic and just authentically funny, and just a riot. But she was like the first person to like look me dead in the eye. She goes, I understand you're this fancy pants opera singer, but you're allowed to be funny. And it was just such, like, the world opened up for me as far as just, oh, I'm allowed. And so that kind of got me into telling more funny stories as far as banter. Mm-hmm. And just in between songs, when I would perform in, these recital type situations, I would tell stories in a funny way to kind of give my audience permission. Like, you're allowed to like classical music, even if you're not educated, even if you don't understand the language. You're allowed to like this, because I'm going to tell you the story just like we're hanging out at a diner.
Yeah.
And that's how I would approach my storytelling. And then doing this cabaret show week after week and, coming up with new stories and still musical aspects, I ended up meeting more and more comedians. And that's how I ended up meeting my friend Jason Pollock, who, has been in Impractical Jokers, and he was on the Nick and ran a comedy club here in Jersey. And time passed. Julie ended up going on to America's Got Talent, and the cabaret show kind of ended. But then COVID happened. And Jason reached out to me and said, hey, why don't we do a podcast? We always had such a good rapport together. Why don't we do that? And so we did. And we got to interview so many amazing people. I mean, everything from the Cenobites from Hellraiser. We talked with them on screen, and adult film stars. And
why not?
Exactly. Why not? We spoke to an astrophysicist who's based in Hawaii, talking about there was a oblong shaped meteor that was kind of coming out of our solar system into our solar system and then back out. So we were just talking about all these amazing things. And then one day we ended up talking with a gentleman by the name of Mark Riccadonna. And Mark reached out to me and said, hey, I think that you are so funny. We need to work together. And I said, okay, that sounds great. Hung up the phone. I said, who the heck is this guy? I know we just kind of hung out on this podcast for like the last 90 minutes, but who is he? And I looked him up. Amazing stand-up comic, amazing guy, actor, director, film writer, and he also was a writer for Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live.
Really?
Yeah, when Colin Jost first joined SNL, he was still writing.
I didn't know that.
For Weekend Update back then. So I'm like, oh.
The real deal.
Okay, the real deal. And so then Mark asked, well, how long have you been doing stand-up? And I said, well, I don't do stand-up. I sing, but I tell these stories in between the songs, and that's just kind of, he goes, yeah, those stories in between the songs, that's stand-up. How long have you been doing it? So he and I just kind of started to talk and try to figure out how can we function as a performing pair. Mm-hmm. In a world where, as a musician, I'm a headlining performer. As a comedian, he's a headlining performer. And so we started to do these variety shows, and he was kind of like my hall pass, in the sense that like he kind of like helped me cut the line. 'Cause I to this day, I've never done an open mic.
What?
I have never done an open mic.
That's cheating.
It's a lot of people say that. I've been performing on stage for 25 years.
Yeah.
But I've never done an open mic as a comedian. Mark just said, hey, I'm putting on a show in New York. Do you want to come with me? I said, yeah, sure, I'll come. He goes, yeah, bring your keyboard. I kind of want it to like be like old school, where, like you play people on and off stage, you'll sing some songs, but I kind of want you to be like the Ed McMahon, the Andy to Conan kind of dynamic. So like you're there, but you're always there. You're always there musically, you're always there comedically. And we get to New York, and I realize that we are out front of the comic strip live, the comic strip. Seinfeld, did one of his last specials there. It's where Eddie Murphy was discovered. And here I was having my first performance as a comedian. as a comedian, not even as a comedian in New York City, but as a comedian in New York City at the comic strip.
As Justin Gonzalez, not tenor.
Yes,
Justin Gonzalez.
as Justin Gonzalez, not tenor. Yeah, and so it was just amazing. And then from that, Mark was just like, I think we're going to do another one of these next month. Cool. I'd love for you to come back. And then we did it again. And then I started to meet more people. Carol Montgomery was there, an amazing comedy writer and performer in her own right. She's the creator of Funny Women of a Certain Age, which is on cable, and there's a tour that travels the country. And I got to meet her there. I got to meet Rob Bartlett, who's an amazing stand-up comic, also Broadway actor and performer himself. And again, that just kind of opened up more doors. And one day I'm at home and I get a random New York number calling me, and I pick up, and it's Rob Bartlett, and he says, "Hey, we're doing this thing next Sunday. Would really love if you're available, if you would come to do it." He sends me the address, and again, I'm driving my car into the city, and now here I am. I'm at the Cellar.
The Comedy Cellar?
The Comedy Cellar, yes.
And he just wanted you for a little thing.
And it's a similar thing. He's like, "I love how you did that at the comic strip. I would love for you to do the same thing. We're doing a show for a teacher friend of ours. We're raising money for him, and there's going to be all these people, and I'm there at the kind of like the production meeting before the show, and they're like, well, so this guy's going to go first, second, third, fourth, and then we're going to close out the night with Colin." And then I look across the room, and there's Colin Quinn from Saturday Night Live. Again, from my childhood of Saturday Night Live.
They're going to say Colin Jost for a second. And you're like, what?
No, Colin. No, my Colin.
Still Colin.
Yes, still, and still an amazing Colin at that. But there I was, on stage with Colin Quinn, not even 4 feet from me, and he's, talking to me, and this can't be real life, and it's just. Again, just kind of this crazy unfolding of events that kind of happened. And it all really stemmed from my love of storytelling, because, I love to tell stories, be it with music, be it with, in this sort of scenario, even where, I'm not, doing like set up punchline. Yeah. But it's just kind of just sharing the story of existence, Yeah. And it was just so wild to think that it led me to meeting all these amazing people, and I now have this. I've now become this capital C comedian. Yeah. After not even realizing that it was something that I was privy to, and that all came from Julia Scotti just telling me that I was allowed to be funny.
Absolutely, I think a lot of times people think, and I'm guilty of it myself, that you're stuck in a certain role. Mm-hmm. And it's really just a box that we've imposed on ourselves. One day we were just let loose into something, and we needed to create our own boundaries, for our own protection. And then one day we have to be like, oh, well, we don't need that, protection anymore. We don't need to focus on this one thing to get good at it. Now it's, or whatever it might be, just like you said, just try it. You're allowed.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's also something that we've learned in this kind of post-COVID world as creators and artists, is that you do also need to be so much more than just that one thing. And so you need to understand things from in a much more broader scale, which is tough, especially, again, I'm someone who kind of started his career in a very old-fashioned kind of way. Again, I've been doing this for 25 years. And so I started working with people who are now, retired from the business, mm-hmm. or, are kind of considered to be the old guard. In a lot of ways, I'm kind of a part of that group too, as far as a performer, I'm kind of that old guard. And now, I'm looking at people, some are even my age and some are younger. I'm like, wow, this whole idea of being an artist has totally changed,
Yeah.
And it's amazing, though, that you kind of have to give yourself permission to just, okay, I'm allowed to try this. I'm allowed to do it. I'm allowed to be bad at it, and that's the real thing. I'm allowed to be bad at it so that I can get good at it.
That's, I think, what is so tough for some people is if you have something that you're good at, it's hard to go back to being bad at something, especially in a performance aspect. When how you can get to the audience and get that good thing, but you're working on something else. Yeah. It's hard to not go back to that. especially like, and especially with comedy. But like, I suppose it'd be different for music and singing, for singing and comedy at the same time. That is.
Well, it has its own things, and the thing that's been tough for me as a kind of like a specialty act as far as a comedian, because I do music in my comedy, but I do it in a way to kind of propel my stories forward. And I've had a ton of comedians like, "Oh, you do so good with the singing stuff. Have you ever thought about doing some parody lyrics or things like that?" I'm like, it's the last thing I want to do, because I think the thing that's really funny about what I do is that the music is never the joke. So like when I perform, so like for instance, I perform with an amazing comic. Her name's Ashley Gutermuth, and she's check her out on TikTok or Instagram. She's amazing. It's just so darn funny. And we did a number of tours together, and one of the fun ones was actually we were on a 2-week tour through Alaska and Greenland, performing for Armed Forces Entertainment. But when I tour with her as kind of like the host / feature act, I do like a 20-minute set. And here's how my 20-minute set goes. They announce me, and I come out on stage singing "Fly Me to the Moon" by Frank Sinatra. And then I tell some stories about who I am, just to kind of introduce who I am to these people. And then I talk about how I was encouraged to not ever join a rock and roll band because my mother was afraid that I would starve. And so I became an opera singer instead. And in that amazing journey, traveling around the world and singing in these amazing places, I learned something very important. Opera singers starve too, So,
Yeah.
So I had to have a very serious conversation with myself. What was I going to do to subsidize my income?
Yeah.
So I joined one of those rock and roll bands my mom told me not to. And so my second song of my set is a song by Queen, because I'm currently the lead singer of a band that pays tribute to the Queen songbook. So
I don't even need this.
I'll set you up. Don't worry.
Thanks.
And then, so after that, because I've buried the lead enough, I'll usually tell another little story. But because I had mentioned that I was a classical singer, I end my set by singing a classical song. So in 20 minutes, not only have you heard me tell funny stories, but you've heard me do a song by Frank Sinatra, Freddie Mercury, and Luciano Pavarotti. And that's kind of the humor of it too, is the fact that you've heard one guy authentically sing 3 very different singers, all while being authentically funny.
You got to go on like Kill Tony or something like that.
I'm not. Oh, no, please. I am a gentle flower.
You don't
they would tear me apart.
They're
I know
vicious
it.
on there.
No, thank you. No, thank you. Plus, Texas is too warm.
That's it. Yeah, I couldn't believe when I found out that was in Texas. I can't believe people live like south of Jersey. Like I like vacation there, or maybe stay there temporarily, just during the cold season, whatever, snowbird. But like in the summer, like when your tires are literally melting, your shoes are melting to the ground. Like
I love when people they say like, oh no, you should come down to Texas, and I'm like, why? They're like, well, there's air conditioning everywhere, and except for the part where you're between the air conditioning and you are actively on the surface of the sun.
We have air conditioning everywhere here too.
Exactly, right. We have heat. We have so much here. You know what? I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, we're fine. We're fine. But you mentioned that you're part of a Queen band like right now. It's not your first Queen thing that you've done, but you've been with Queen for a while.
Yeah, so Queen has been a part of
not the band.
Yes, no, not the band. The music of Queen has been a part of my journey for almost 10 years now. I was with a group called 33 1/3 Live, and they were a group of musicians from the 80s that performed in the hair metal Jersey scene. And as they've gotten older, they realized, we kind of miss playing together as friends and musicians. And so they decided that what they would do is they would pick an album, one of their favorite albums, and they would get together, see who's available, and they would learn the album and just have fun. And then after they did that, they're like, this is too much fun to just keep it in the garage. Why don't we do a show and we'll raise money for a food shelter or an animal shelter? And so that's what they would do, is they would do a couple of shows, raise money for a good cause, and then be like, okay, cool, let's pick another album.
Nice.
And so they started by doing Aerosmith's first album. They did the Cars album. They brought me in to sing backup vocals when they did Who's Next by The Who.
Good album.
And
Good
that's
album.
when the head of the group first heard me sing for the first time. And he said, we've got to do something to get you out front. And then he said, okay, how about we do A Night at the Opera by Queen? And I said, whoa, I do not sound like Freddie Mercury at all. And he said, well, I don't want you to sound like Freddie. I want you to help me honor him. Well, when you talk to a girl like that, I mean, come on. So I said, okay, cool. Well, let's do this. And it took us about 1.5 years to really learn the album because, again, we weren't going to dress up like them, but we were going to painstakingly learn every single note just like they recorded it.
But I would love to see you with like a little pencil stash, like put in here.
No, I'm definitely more of a Freddie Jupiter. Definitely not a Freddie Mercury. So
That's one thing I always thought was funny when was it Rami Malek was doing it, the whole thing where he would like bite his lip.
Yeah, they put the chiclets in. Yeah, 'cause he did have tooth prosthetics. And that's the thing that I kind of tell folks now when I perform is that my focus is not to impersonate. It's to bring respect and honor to these amazing stories that Freddie and Roger and Brian and John told on stage, and that they shared with people. And so this group ended up being 11 pieces on stage. We had 6 dedicated singers so that we could do all of the backup vocals properly. And we had 2 guitarists, a bass guitarist, we had a keyboardist and a drummer. And those of us that sang also played various instruments as well, just for those things. So everything, we didn't have pre-recorded things. Everything was played live in these shows. And we did that for 7 years. And it was just so much fun. But again, getting 11 people together for 7 years of performing and something that was just supposed to be kind of a one-off. We were going to raise some money for, again, a food pantry or an animal shelter. And then after we did that, we were going to kind of move on. We were approached by a group called The Land of Oz. They're an Ozzy Osbourne tribute.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they said, hey, we'd love if you'd open up for us. And we said, okay, well, we'll do that. Sure, it'll be fun. And so we did that. And there was someone in the audience who was a manager and said, if you can do a 90-minute show, I will book you. If you can do a 2-hour show, I'll represent you. And so we went to work. We're like, okay, we got to learn some more tunes. And so we did that. And
what'd you guys end up going with?
As far as songs?
As far as length?
We have a 2-hour show.
You put the full
2-hour show. Well, the album is a little less than an hour. So if you're doing every song on the album, A Night at the Opera. So we're like, oh. So we just have to learn like maybe 10 more songs of their greatest hits. And those will be easy to learn because there's so many resources out there. There's so much that we already know of this music. We just kind of have to nail down what we want to do specifically as individuals so that way we can properly perform these songs as they were recorded. Yeah. So we went with a 2-hour show and we ended up doing another show where we had another group open for us. They were an amazing Green Day tribute.
Love me some Green Day.
So we had this great Green Day group open up for us. Jackie Bam Bam from WMMR was the host of the show.
Heck yeah.
So cool. Jackie ran up to me at the end of the show and grabbed me by my shirt. He goes, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "I don't know, but you're enormous and terrifying."
How tall? Wait, how tall?
He's taller than me. I think he's like 6'4", I think. So he's very skinny too. He's very much so like a vampire glam rock guy. That's just who he is.
I'm sorry, Nosferatu.
It's really it. He's just there. And it's so funny because here I am, I'm singing Freddie on stage and he's so clued into the rock and roll scene that of course he didn't know who I was. I was an opera singer. So he didn't know who I was because I wasn't a rock singer.
It was still Night at the Opera though.
Exactly. So we're still doing a Night at the look at you. And so we ended up doing that show and there was someone in the audience there and they came up to us and said, "Hi, I work for Fox Films and I don't know if you know, there's a movie coming out called Bohemian Rhapsody. And we would love if your band would perform live at the Philadelphia premiere of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Wait, what?
And so my group learned 45 minutes of our music, totally acoustic, to perform in the theater in Philadelphia for the press.
Get out.
And we were one of the first people in Philadelphia to see the movie Bohemian Rhapsody.
No way. I've never heard this story before. That's crazy.
It was, I mean, you don't got to tell me. Again, you know, over this thing that was just supposed to be a one-off ended up just snowballing.
Did you guys get like any shout outs from like anybody like that like saw the clips, like make any news things, or was that just kind of like it?
We were talked about, I know, on MMR. We were talked about on MMR the next morning because Preston and Steve did their premiere in King of Prussia, I believe, at the movie theater in King of Prussia. And they were talking about how they were livid that they heard that the Philadelphia premiere had a live Queen band. And they were talking about us for like 15 minutes on air.
That's awesome. On Preston and Steve too.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a little bit of an audience.
A little bit.
Huge
in the city.
But it was just so amazing. Like, wow, I think we actually have something here. And so we started performing up and down the East Coast, and then we were about to branch out, you know, to the Midwest, and then COVID hit.
Wow.
And, you know, we call COVID the great equalizer because, you know, it didn't matter how high you were up on the ladder. COVID just knocked everyone back down to the bottom. You know, I mean, even like the most famous comedians, they were playing clubs again just to kind of get back into the rhythm so that they could go play the theaters and play the arena shows again. So everyone was just knocked down 10 pegs from where they were. And so we kind of like were having to rebuild that show. And I feel that because of COVID, that momentum got lost and priorities kind of shifted for folks. I mean, you know, again, these are a majority of people in the band. Again, 10 of the 11 people, this wasn't their full-time thing. I perform full-time. That's what I do. And so I was the only one that like I kind of had my chips in on this thing.
Yeah.
And so they just kind of got to a point where it was just like, you know, I think that this thing has run its course. And, you know, you have to respect that. I mean, especially instead of just kind of pushing that rock up the hill, they just said, you know what? I think it's time.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that and I respect that so much. And then our management was just like, hey, you know, the head of the band gave his blessing. You know, if anyone kind of wants to pick up and continue to do this sort of thing, you know, it's totally cool. And so I was like, you know what? I think I want to do this. You know, I've put a lot of, you know, love, sweat, and tears into, you know, really learning how my instrument, you know, the voice as an instrument, how that works to perform this style of music. It's like, you know, and I really love doing it.
Yeah. And
so I called up some friends and I said, hey, here's what I'm thinking. I'd love to have a smaller group together that if, say, for instance, my guitarist can't make it, I have 3 other guitarists that I can call. So that way we can be working. And so we put that together. And so we went from the Killer Queen experience. Now it's Justin Gonzalez and the Jukebox plays Queen.
Justin Gonzalez and the Jukebox, and when it's Queen, it's playing Queen?
Yep, plays Queen. We have other shows that we have kind of in the queue to do. We're really, really excited. 2027 is the 50th anniversary of the album Bat Outta Hell by Meatloaf.
Wow.
And so we already have the songbook and set lists together.
Oh, it's going to be incredible.
Play the album Bat Outta Hell live. And we are also going to use that show to celebrate the music of Todd Rundgren and Jim Steinman, who were both original performers on that first album. So Todd Rundgren's the guitarist for Meatloaf.
I need to do more research. There's a lot of stuff that, like, Todd Rundgren surprises me all the time.
I mean, he's so cool. The bass player for that album was a gentleman named Kazim Sultan, who played with Todd during the Utopia years. And so the two of them are there. Jim Steinman was the songwriter and pianist. And on those big epic tunes, Bat Outta Hell, Paradise by the Dashboard Light, the drummer was Max Weinberg of the E Street Band.
Get out of here.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's such an amazing, of course, every song on
Yeah.
that album is just face melting.
Yeah.
And these guys were so amazing in their own right. So it's like, we can't just do a Meatloaf show. So we're doing that whole album as the first half. And then we're bouncing back and forth between Todd and Steinman for the second half.
That's super cool.
And it's very, very cool stuff. And so that's one of the shows we have lined up in the new year. We're doing an American Songbook style show, a Sinatra style show, with all of the same musicians. That's the reason we call it the Jukebox as well, because these performers, these instrumentalists, are equally as versatile as the music that I like to sing. And so, sure, they're going to do Meatloaf, they're going to do Queen, we have a Best of Broadway show that we have lined up. Everything from The Man of La Mancha and The Sound of Music to Rent, and the great modern shows that are on Broadway right now. And so we have that. We're working on an R&B show. We're still kind of talking about what we want that to be.
It's a lot of music to go through.
There's so much to choose from. And I have kind of this idea that I keep going back and forth that maybe what we might need to do is I was thinking, it really needs to be a good rhythm and blues review. And then, to quote the movie, I see the light. I said, we should do the Blues Brothers.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
It's because that's what they called it. They were the Blues Brothers Rhythm and Blues Review. That's the name of the group. That's the name of the show. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, we could literally do all of that's all classic, amazing R&B, Motown, pop top 40 hits done with this very specific style of group. I'm like, oh, that's again kind of a no-brainer. So we have these kind of offshoots of what this group, Justin Gonzalez and the Jukebox, is going to be. But it's kind of a no-brainer that our foundation is Queen, just because that's become such a popular thing that people have seen me do. And so how do we kind of keep that moving forward and we kind of build off of that foundation? But then there's also so many people that know me in the many different lives that I've led, And so how do we bring that aspect to the stage as well? And the fact that the folks at Panzeiler Entertainment are so enthusiastic, and that the folks in my band are just like, this is going to be so amazing, that we're going to be able to put such earnest work and love into learning this music, but it's always going to be fresh. And that we have all of these different shows that we can do and that we are able to do, and how exciting that is, that we're going to be able to hit the road, and we'll be doing Queen, and then we'll be doing Meatloaf, and then we'll be doing Broadway, and then we'll be doing this rhythm and blues review, and it's just so exciting that this new chapter, and it all kind of came from this love of being able to share the music and the stories of the Queen songbook.
That's awesome. So then do you guys have any initial shows lined up yet, like the first shows?
We do. In fact, we're going to be, our very first show is going to be in September 19th. We're going to be in Connecticut at the beautiful Broadbrook Opera House. And
if this episode's not out by then, everyone can yell at me in the comments.
we got a month. We got a month. We're good. But so that's our very first show. And then that same weekend, it's, again, the crazy life that I lead. So that's Friday, the 19th. The 20th, I'm back in New Jersey doing comedy. I'm doing stand-up. And then the 21st, we're going to be in New Hope, PA, at the New Hope Winery, which is a great venue. If you've never been there, the tavern at the New Hope Winery, just absolutely fantastic.
Beautiful area, actually.
So beautiful. And they get some really, really amazing acts. And for some reason, they're having me be there too. But no. But it's going to be such a fun show, and it's a very intimate setup. I think it's just about 200 seats in there, but the way the room is set up, it's like you're practically on stage with us. And again, just to have this group where it's a guitarist, bass, piano, drums, myself singing. There's four people on stage singing at once, so we still get that authentic, multiple background vocal, effect that we really expect from Queen's music. But still presenting it in the way they recorded it, but in a live concert rock show setting, and just really, really exciting. So those are the first ones coming up, and for more shows and stuff, check out jgjukebox.com.
JG Jukebox.
That's it.
Justin
Yeah.
Gonzalez and the Jukebox. So then, on the topic of Queen, what's your top song that like the average listener, like say someone's only heard like whatever comes on like the top 40, 70s, 80s radio, what would you tell someone like if they really want to like listen to like Queen, like go to this, and that's the real starting point?
Early Queen 1 and 2, that's so like prog rock. So it's like if you like Rush, and that sort of music, you're going to love Queen 1 and 2, Seven Seas of Rye and Ogre Battle and those sorts of songs. If you really want to kind of start to see the blend of that experimental rock and pop 40s sensibility, I say you have to listen to A Night at the Opera. That is such a great album. That's when they changed producers. They started recording in Germany, and they kind of went this very different route of just, we're going to play it live, we're going to record it live, and that's it. They started to do the multi-tracking thing that they kind of become known for, when we think of Bohemian Rhapsody, which is on that album. That has I think, arguably one of the most underrated songs that they have ever recorded, the Prophets song, which is longer than Bohemian Rhapsody, but it's a great storytelling song, and it was one of the first times that tape delay was used in the recording process.
So he would record like over top of himself, like
So he would sing, and then his voice would echo after him twice. And so he would have these cascading vocal harmonies that would happen over top of himself. I mean, it was magical.
Yeah.
Magical. I mean, because again, no one had ever done this before. It was new technology that he was singing with himself and creating this tapestry of sound. And then the other guys would sing with him, and you would have this chorus doing the same thing, where they were singing with their own echoes to develop this tapestry of sound that would just build and build and build and become this very operatic thing.
And that's what that's part of the process behind what made Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, this is the Prophets song.
Oh, the Prophet song.
Yeah. So this is so the idea of Bohemian Rhapsody, I think that was the marriage of kind of like the overall idea of what the album was. Because you hear songs on there that are progressive rock. You hear things that are just straight up, pop, bubblegum, that's You're My Best Friend is on that album as well, and that's just, it's delicious. It's delicious candy, But then you have songs like Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon, which is, it's a vaudeville song. And so you have these songs that are just of such different background, which I feel really, when you look at Queen, like they all are very much so individuals. And so you hear this song to song, like there's so much of themselves as individuals that they're, placing forward, but that's existing as the quartet as they are. Mm-hmm. Bohemian Rhapsody, I feel, is kind of the culmination of all of that, because you have these classical moments with the piano. You have these choral moments where there's 9 vocal parts on that track alone, where they're singing, they're recording a line and then they're recording another line on top of it.
And that's before digital, so they had a limited amount of lines.
Very limited amount. And that's part of the reason where we get the sound quality as well, because there's kind of a degraded quality as you kind of keep stacking on top, because that's 9 vocal parts. That's not to mention the 4 guitar parts. It's not to mention, again, the multiple percussion parts, because it's not just drum kit. There's auxiliary percussion as well. John Deacon is playing 2 and 3 bass parts simultaneously. So there's all of this that's happening sonically. So there is some degraded quality, but it added to this idea of, there's now this vocal chorus effect, which is now why we have vocal chorus. That's now an effect. It's what happened because of all of these things stacked up on top of each other. Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And they were really pushing that envelope. But in that song alone, there's the there's the piano pop, there's the straight on rock and roll four chord rock in your face, but then there's what they call lovingly the opera section, where there is this just straight up operatic chorus in the middle of that song, that it's very much so a bit of all of them in this piece of music. And I feel like it's, of course, that's the last song, the very last song of the album is actually God Save the Queen, where they're playing their version of God Save the Queen. And that's the final instrumental on the album. But this is the last song on that album. Like, of course it is, because this is just a beautiful bow to tie up everything that we just experienced in this album, where you really get to see not just what they're doing musically, but who these people are. Because, I mean, we all have heard, Another One Bites the Dust. We all have heard, of course, We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions, especially if you've been to any sporting event.
Oh, yeah.
That these are things that are just kind of part of the soundtrack of our lives.
The diegesis.
Yeah. And it really is. And it's just really, really spectacular that these there's so much that is in the top 40, and the top 100 that Queen had to offer, but there's so much more that, that we would call deep cuts, that I think they're only deep cuts because, well, you have to pick ones to be deep cuts, Yeah. The songs are so good.
I still remember I came when I was working at the radio station. I walked in and I was like, oh man, like I got a cool deep cut, and I was like, I love It's a Kind of Magic, and you're like, what?
Yeah, that's technically not a deep cut. I think that's definitely top. I think top 40 for them. I think it did make top 40.
I later found I walked out of the studio, I looked it up, and I was like, ooh.
I mean, but it's so funny because even songs that we consider deep cuts have found a new life in popular culture. Like last season, or maybe it was the season before, Cool Cat was being used in commercials. And that's, I believe, off of Jazz, the album Jazz. Again, it wasn't a huge commercial hit, but here it is being used literally in commercials, And I think people post Bohemian Rhapsody, the movie coming out, that people realized wow, these guys were so prolific and there's so much out there to enjoy that you can't just box them into their top 40, that there's just so much out there. And that's also a tough thing, because especially in a tribute group, how do you get to it all? That in the time we went from just playing a night at the opera to in our final shows, we even incorporated the Flash Gordon theme, and we're doing that live. And, there's all these amazing songs, and there's songs where we had to stop doing, just it really doesn't have a secure home in the show any longer. Mm-hmm. So we had to stop doing The Show Must Go On. Again, a song that just tears your heart out. So amazing. Or I'm trying to think of another one that we stopped doing.
Who Wants to Live Forever? Is that one?
Who Wants to Live Forever? We took that out of the show.
I didn't even know. That's just a song that sounds similar.
Yeah, no, yeah, and they do. They have very similar vibes. And it was we don't have a ballad place anymore for those kind of downshift songs. We don't have a spot for them. So we just kind of had to let them go off to the side for a little bit.
Not living forever.
Not living forever, no.
Okay. For the very end of this interview, I got a little bit of a lightning round for you.
Oh boy, okay.
Saturday morning cartoon lineup. What's your what do you remember, and what were the top ones?
Oh, I am so old. My favorite one, Saturday morning cartoons, was a show called Recess.
Yes.
So Recess was my go-to. It was Recess, Pepper Ann. But I loved Recess because there was a character on that show that really spoke to me, and that was Mikey. So Mikey...
The snapback kid, right?
No. That was TJ. TJ was a snapback kid. Mikey was the one who was enormous.
Oh, yeah.
So I was always a big kid. So I was 13 years old. I was 6 feet tall.
Wow.
And my voice had already changed. And I was so deeply emotional. I loved poetry, and I was taking social ballroom classes just because I loved dancing. And this character, Mikey, he was, all the other kids like came up to his navel. He was enormous. He was a big kid. He had blonde, crazy hair, and he was very soft-spoken. He loved to dance. He loved poetry, and when he sang, the singing voice for his voice in the show was Robert Goulet. So I was like, this is me. So it's that's
Where's the camera?
exactly. It's like, yeah, who's, I should be getting a cut.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, so Recess, that was my morning show, and Mikey, he really spoke to me. Mikey was me. Yeah.
That's awesome. So then, what's the number one album that you had growing up? High school or middle school?
Okay. I'm gonna try to throw a couple at you, okay? Because I grew up in that age where I was in elementary school when we got our first CD player in the house.
Ooh.
Yeah. So our very first CD that we got for the kids was an album called Peter, Paul, and Mommy 2. So in the 70s, they did an album called Peter, Paul, and Mommy, where it was Peter, Paul, and Mary in a room with a bunch of kids. And they were just singing together. How cute.
Yeah.
And so now that they were all older, Mary had just had, they originally did it because Mary had just had her daughter. And I believe they redid this in the 90s because Mary's daughter had just had her daughter.
Oh.
And so they were doing Peter, Paul, and Mary 2, T-O-O. And I remember listening to that album for the first time, and Peter Yarrow sang We Shall Overcome on there. And I just remember losing it. I just bawled my eyes out. And I was one room away from where my father was. My father ran into the room and he took the headphones off. He said, "What's wrong?" He thought I hurt myself. I'm just like in between, like just dramatic sobs. I'm just, it's so beautiful. So like that's like the first album I remember owning in our household that really spoke to me. And really cool thing is a number of years later, I actually had the opportunity to share that story with Peter Yarrow.
Really?
And he and I kind of developed a friendship. And yeah, I'm really glad that, so seldom do we actually like get to meet our heroes and have it be worthwhile.
Yeah.
I met Peter. He was so amazing. We did keep a small correspondence back and forth. And I'm really, really glad that I was able to do that. He just passed away last year. And so the fact that I was able to have that with someone who really kind of opened my eyes to the kind of story of how important music was. Yeah. So that was like the first album. But yeah, first album I bought though, first album I bought was Toxicity, System of a Down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, Serge was just one heck of a vocalist. Like his voice and, again, how he sang and how he would put those stories across was just like, oh, man, how cool. I wish I could do this. And, again, I was still a teenager. I was still in this head that I'm on this trajectory to be this opera singer. So this was never in the cards for me. And now here I am all these years later. Yeah. And I'm a rock singer now.
System of a Down is an interesting band for me because I don't like his singing voice. But the number one thing that like I think at least that like prevents people from going from like being like a good singer who can sing like in a choir to being like a great singer is like their ability to like put emotion into their voice. And his voice is like a cartoon character as far as emotion goes. There is like so much going on there.
It's all out there.
Yeah.
It's all out there. And it's so funny because like I now think of like the rock bands because I was a skater kid in high school, and I think of like the bands that I liked then versus like the rock bands that speak to me now. So like my wife is a huge metal fan. And so she introduced me to Slipknot. And I was like, this isn't necessarily something that I could find myself just like sitting at home listening to, but I saw them live. I'm like, I get it. This is probably one of the most amazing live music events I have ever been to. And again, I've done what I've done. I've sung in Madison Square Garden and Carnegie Hall, with, we're arguably some of the world's greatest musicians. I've sung with, Rod Stewart, and I've sung with Chubby Checker, and I've sung with, who's going to pick up all these names? No, I've sung and done all this stuff, but here I am, seeing rock music being done so passionately, but it's not fueled by anger. It's not fueled by hate. It's not fueled by anything. It's such beautiful theater. and it's just so amazing. And then like bands like Volbeat, where I'm just like, man, these guys, they can legitimately sing. They can and that's like such a moving thing for me, because I felt like I loved the song, I loved this, but I just feel like these guys are, again, being a vocal practitioner, I'm like, they're doing things that are hurtful and harmful, or I don't know how they're doing this in a healthy way, and that makes me not enjoy it from the practitioner side. And
It's hard for you to like be invested if you're like thinking in your head the entire time.
exactly. And I as I'm getting older and older and older, I'm knocking on the door of 38 in a couple of months. I'm like, you know what? Sometimes you can just enjoy something for the sake of enjoying it, and you kind of have to turn that brain off sometimes. And I feel, as I've learned to sing Freddie from almost an academic standpoint, how do I do this in a way that's healthy? Because again, singing so many different styles of music, I'm singing rock and roll Saturday night, but then I'm singing in church on Sunday.
Yeah.
And so it's a totally different animal. So how do I do that in a healthy way? And so like now it's like, oh, I think I get it. And I find like my enjoyment of those singers, but has evolved. But yeah, System of a Down was my first album that I with my own money purchased. And then there was just kind of like a whole slew of questionable albums after that.
Questionable?
Oh gosh, yeah. Was that Chocolate Starfish Hot Dog Flavored Water? Yeah, Limp Bizkit. Come on, man.
Oh man. Limp Bizkit's a tough one. Limp Bizkit, I mean, like, I tried, man. I tried. I really, like, I listened to Bowling for Soup, and I tried to get into, into like what did he call it? The rap rock music, all that stuff. I try to get into it. Girl, All the Bad Guys Want. He mentions hardcore, and I couldn't do it.
It's one of those things that I realized after I bought the album, that I liked these things commercially. That I can enjoy it for the song. I don't know if I could dig it for the whole album, And that was the thing that I kind of opened up my eyes at that time to realizing, like, ooh, music is different now than the music that I was introduced to when I was younger, which was my parents' music. Things like, I was listening to like Chicago, their first album, Chicago Transit Authority.
Yeah.
Every song is amazing on that album because they didn't write singles. They wrote albums.
Absolutely.
Right. It's a different animal.
Yeah, it's totally different animal. And I mean, with a lot of those groups at the time, like, there wasn't other stuff that you're like, oh, I can't do that. Like, oh, somebody's already got that hook. Somebody's already got this hook. It was like 40, 50 years ago. And so like all like the field of rock and roll was like ripe for the taking.
It was the Wild West.
The Wild West.
Yeah.
And so like that's like something I like so much now about like cover bands, coming really into fruition. I feel like for a while, like if someone was like a cover band, it'd kind of be like, well, they better be really good. And do they have permission to be doing that? Like, but now I feel like, it's almost like you almost need cover bands, It's like having minstrels, going out and telling the stories of like the great adventurers before.
It's the stories of yore.
Yeah, you're like they're picking up these past things, introducing them to people who might not have had a chance to have seen it in person before. And like you said, when you went to go see Slipknot, you never know who's gonna have like that religious experience where like the next day they wake up and they're like, this is it.
Yeah, it was really. Actually, I was just doing an interview. I was doing shows out in Ohio, and was interviewed for one of the local papers out there. And we were talking about when you're like in a small town, if there's not a cover band or a tribute band coming through, the actual group's not coming through. That's it. If you're in a backwoods town that has an annual summer festival, and Queen's not going there. Bon Jovi's not going there.
Yeah.
But if you can get someone who plays their music and give you that same live concert experience, that's so amazing. You've opened up the world for these people. I was talking to the entertainment writer of this newspaper, and they're saying, I've only seen a handful of these people live. And it's if they come to the next local big town and it's a 3.5 hour drive there, not there and back, there. So it needs to be a day. It's not just buying the $400 ticket. It's buying the $400 ticket, buying dinner, getting the hotel room, because it's an experience.
It needs to be a full night at the opera.
Exactly. Yeah, and it becomes this huge investment. But here we were in this amazing little town. Again, 10,000 people in the whole town, and it felt like 3/4 of the town was standing in front of us that day. And it was just so amazing to have that experience, to be able to share this music with them that they all listen to. They all listen to it, but being able to perform it for them live and with that same heart and electricity. And it's amazing to be a part of that. And I love, the fact that it has kind of become more and more prevalent. I feel like there was also a time where it was like, ugh, you're in a cover band.
Definitely.
I was like, it's like, okay, great, Robbie Hart, you're the wedding singer.
Yeah.
and that's, and don't get me wrong, I did that for 11 years too. I played in a wedding band for 11 years, and the thing is that, well, it exists for a reason.
And it's kind of the same thing. I mean, you're playing covers of one band or you're playing covers of every band.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And it's top 40. And the thing is that it's what people love. And, the fact that you can give people what they love, it's such a cool thing. But I feel like there was a time where it was like, oh, that's like selling out, or that's, you're a poser. You're not really making music. I'm like, well, it was them making music. I'm just doing it in a way that is accessible. Yeah. That's it. We're just making art accessible. And I feel like that's become, there was even a time when we started with playing Queen's music, where it was kind of seen that way. I was like, oh, great. It's a tribute. Like, but no, it's an experience. And we want to share the experience of this music with all of you, because it's so special. And there's no reason that it shouldn't be accessible.
Absolutely. Well, Justin, I am glad that we got to share this experience here today. Here on the first episode of my podcast, which if you could see behind the camera, you'd see my room is turned upside down. I had very limited...
Literally.
Yeah, I tried setting it up many ways, but so I'm really glad you could come in today.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Absolutely. I've always wanted to have more conversations with you, because I knew that you had an upbringing with music, but I didn't know that you had such a storied history where you're dropping all these names. I'm gonna need to bring in the vacuum after this, pick up all these names off the floor. But really, thank you so much. And so once again, where's the next place you're going to be, and what's the tags again?
So we're going to be at the Broadbrook Opera House in September 19th, September 21st. We're going to be at the New Hope Winery, and you can go on Instagram, you can go on Facebook, you can go online to our website, JG Jukebox.
JGJukebox.com, or
that's it, .com, and JG Jukebox on all of our socials.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. And if this is your first time listening, make sure you go hit the button that lets you follow, whatever it might be, a heart or subscribe. Yeah, whatever it is. Thank you so much.